Good evening, everybody. It is, the date here is December 13th, 2023. It's 5:30 PM, and this is the Senior Center Addition Feasibility Study Committee meeting. I am Leah Fabian, Chair of this committee, but I am representing the Lakeville Select Board. I will just let everyone introduce themselves, starting on this side.
Nate Dowling, Building Commissioner.
Katie Drozers from the Finance Committee.
Oh, yeah, you went
I already
already.
went.
Lori Fahey, COA Director.
Devaney Boyajian, COA Board Chair.
Ari Sky, Town Administrator.
Charlene Motley on board.
Mary Gauthier, Friends of the COA.
Nancy Richmond, Board.
Donna Adams, Board Member.
Eva June White, Board Member.
Rafael Tasco, RT Architecture.
George Figueredo, RTA Architects.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome to everybody. So the first thing on our agenda is review the updated feasibility study and needs assessment material from the project manager. So if you wanna, I know we had a whole bunch of the information, but do you wanna go over what has been updated, changed?
Yeah, I mean, basically
Anything
we'll
new
just-
that we've received?
Yeah, we'll go over the estimate that was sent to the board, so everyone gets a feel for what the estimate number was based on, so.
Yeah, so I'll just skip over all the slides that we previously went over. Existing floor plans, the proposed floor plans, and existing and proposed renderings for both of the schemes, as well as the renovation option. Alright, so that's the renovation probable cost, and Scheme 1 and Scheme 2 probable cost. Total numbers, or
Yeah, I can see them right now. So basically what we did is, originally we were only gonna be doing an estimate on the existing facility and one of the proposed schemes. And given, you know, the two schemes that we came up with, we prepared two estimates for both schemes. So Scheme 1, based on, you know, the size of the structure that was being proposed, the estimate came in at, and that's for the larger of the two, 1.8 million. And then for the smaller scheme, which was off the rear of the building, the estimate came in at approximately 1.5 million.
Excuse me, George, I think that's in addition to the renovation cost.
That is it, yeah, and I was just gonna say that. So that cost is purely for the additional work, you know, to build that addition. It doesn't take into consideration any upgrades, which would be fire protection, any of the mechanical units that would be upgraded. That's purely a cost associated with the work for the two schemes. So. If there's any questions or concerns that you'd like to talk about?
It seems like the larger one is a deal when you put those two figures together.
Well, it's money. It's not cheap, but.
So the 1.5 is the one for the rear,
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct, yep, that's correct.
and that's smaller.
that's a smaller.
It is smaller, yeah,
So, but again, the actual cost is 2.6,
including,
right, or 3.9.
correct,
Correct.
yeah.
Yep, and if we look at the renovation estimate, that's almost like a la carte menu of all of the items that could be addressed, they don't necessarily have to be addressed.
Right.
So, a decision would have to be made in terms of which of those items would be part of the renovation process.
Does anybody have any questions? Lori, Ari, Nate, Katie?
Ari touched on it, well, not really a question, but just making a point to say, the cost of the proposed expansions are for that only. I just wanted to make sure everyone, you know, was aware of that, and that to do the renovations along with it, the renovations are a total separate cost.
I think it'd be helpful to get some clarity on the scope of the renovations. I think it's not entirely clear from just looking at the list, what, you know, what's the conceptual scope
I mean,
of this?
it's basically attacking, you know, a lot of the systems within the building, mechanical, electrical upgrades, restroom upgrades, and again, it's not like you have to do everything. For example, the mechanical units, they're 20 years, so they're at their threshold of life expectancy. Not saying that they're gonna expire tomorrow or next month or, you know, in the spring, but they're reaching that point where, you know, you could start having issues. And I think, you know, talking with Lori, I believe every heating season you have someone coming out,
Yeah,
checking
past
things.
3 years,
Yeah.
whenever the heating season starts, we've been calling someone in to patch something, so.
Right, right.
Okay.
Which is common with, you know, units of that age, unfortunately. But again, it's kind of like an à la carte. You don't have to renovate the entire building. There will be some things that you will be forced to do. It will trip the MAAB code, you know, for percentage of construction and estimated costs, et cetera. But it's a number just to kind of capture, you know, worst case scenario, right? If you were to do everything in the building, that was the worst case scenario for the estimated cost. But again, and I say this, I know I say this I sound like a broken record, but the facility is a great facility. It is in decent, it's in good shape. I mean, it's in good shape. There are some things that will need to be addressed, you know, over time, and probably some, like mechanicals, probably would need to be addressed sooner, because they're probably gonna be at that point where you'll start having issues with them. But, I mean, all in all, the exterior of the building, I think it's in decent shape. The roofing as well, but it's a study, and it's just giving you a snapshot of, you know, what is going to be needed soon to keep the building in the condition that it's in currently. So,
Do you have a price per square foot for each plan?
yeah, I believe it's a square foot cost, yeah. So for the larger one, I believe it was $812 a square foot, and the other one was like $955, I believe.
Per square foot,
Yeah,
correct. And then-
per square foot.
Yeah, and then for the renovation, it was $238 per square foot. Again, kind of piggybacking on what George was saying, that also included renovations of the restrooms. Again, they don't have to be renovated, they are a little older, but they're still perfectly functional. That included all of the lighting upgrades. It included a partial improvement to the exterior, including the siding and the roofing. Again, it's still okay, but with time it will have to be addressed. So I believe we covered like 25% of the roof. So if the whole roof has to be replaced, multiply that by 4. Again, it's almost like a à la carte menu, right? Not everything has to be included. But it gives you an idea of the cost associated with it if that's the direction you'd like to go in.
I think at our last meeting, I think we had some conversation about getting an actual cost for the fire protection piece. Is that in
It's
there?
Yeah,
Okay,
they're in all three estimates,
Okay.
basically, yeah.
all right. And that would be that would satisfy if we trigger the MAAB
No,
code?
that would be a different code, but
Yep,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
It would be a different code, but you know, if you were to do larger additions, yeah, we trip that requirement, so we'd have to put fire protection. Yeah, if we did renovations in the existing building, and you know, depending on the level of alteration, you know, I don't believe it's going to trip it personally. So we would be fine. So.
Question about that, so would it be, if you're gonna put in fire protection, would it be wiser to go with one that, okay, say in the future you do add on and it does trigger that other code, would it be wiser to go with that other fire protection right up front, or is it easy to be added onto?
It's a good question. So it's going to be based on, you know, the flow coming in off the street and whether it'll need a fire pump. But what can be done with the engineering is that they can add in the additional square footage to the design so that in the event that you do put a fire suppression system on an addition down the road, the current system would be adequate to accommodate, you know, future expansion to the fire suppression system.
And one of the line items in the renovation estimate was bringing in a new line from the street
Right.
to the building.
And there's still unknowns, like, you know, we don't know what the pressure is on the street. I'm sure it's not extremely high. So a fire pump may be needed, which would help, you know, increase the pressure for within the building. So there's still some unknowns, you know, that would have to be determined once it gets to the next level.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm looking for the actual original report that
I didn't bring it with me.
was provided, because I know that we had some corrections and everything that had
Yep.
to be made.
So what the plan, yeah, so we submitted some of the corrections that were
Okay.
in the initial report, but, you know, we're basically at the end of the study phase, so what we'll do now is kind of collaborate all the information that we have, and we'll summarize, you know, some of the reasons for the additions in the final report, so that basically, you know, it's documented, this was the reason why we did a proposed addition, these are the numbers associated with each one, et cetera, so it'll be detailed in the final report. You know, today we're just seeing if there's anything that you want to add,
Yep,
you know, that
okay.
may be
Um,
needed, or,
So I do know that as we've been sitting here for a few of these meetings, we've been talking about the actual, you know, services that we're not providing, like the brown bag program, like that Meals on Wheels gets packaged out of this room, which
Correct.
takes this space.
Yep.
The pantry, will those things be reflected as part of like a needs assessment, or?
we'll basically cover the square footages that were allocated for these, you know, uses, and then we'll, you know, we'll show that in the final report, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Which
Alright.
kind of go with what was being proposed, and so when you look at what's being proposed, those spaces that you're referring to were
Yep.
shifted into the new additions, to kind of open up room here, so
Yep.
that they could, you know, use the space for what it was intended for, so that would be included, yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? Anybody? Nate, do you have
Madam
any?
Chair, if it's okay. So the final report, that'll satisfy the requirements in the task order, you know, for like
That's
the needs
correct.
assessment and the
Yep.
statement of condition and all that stuff.
Mhm,
Okay.
That's correct, yeah, that's correct, yeah. Yeah, we kind of like jumped a little bit because
We
of,
did,
you
that's
know,
fine,
having
yeah.
some of the information, meeting with the subcommittee, and some of the wants and needs, and obviously dealing with Lori and her
Right.
staff on what was currently going on with programs and what the need was for future expansion.
Yep.
And, you know, I want to say this, you know, studies are funny, because, you know, a lot of people say, well, why'd you do a study? You know, what, you have the space. You do and you don't. You know what I mean? Like I said, I think at one of my meetings, if you had, you know, 10,000 square feet, and you were utilizing 7,000, right? Then you have space to kind of expand within. Here, I think Lori's done a tremendous job in trying to utilize every square inch of this building for her programs. Can she accommodate, you know, additional programs? I'm sure she can. Is it gonna be 100% efficient? Probably not, but I'm sure she can do her magic. Ideally, it's always good to say, oh, yeah, you know, let's build onto the building because we need this and this and that. But, you know, obviously budget constraints come into play.
Yeah.
Not everyone has, you know, extra $2-3 million to throw at a project, especially when a town is looking at a fire station, which, you know, is needed. But again, it's, you know, it's like, again, it's like a snapshot of, you know, what would be the ideal situation for the Lakeville Senior Center. You know, what would you ideally need to provide the services for seniors in the town? Having a dedicated computer room, you know, have a dedicated area for the brown bag, you know, for the food pantry, the veteran, you know, officer, et cetera. So, you know, that's what we've been trying to display to you.
Yep.
George, do you have a sense of the timeline for the final report?
We'll wrap it up in the next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks tops,
Yeah.
that's it, yeah.
What is the determining factor as to whether you're going to add on or what you're going to do?
Well, it's kind of what I was just saying. So, I mean, you know, it depends on your programming and what you have going on in the
So
building.
in other words, in 2 weeks, you will have an idea of why you're doing what you're doing?
Well, it will be just, it will be described within the report detailing, you know, what the current uses are within the building and the square footages, you know, to
It's
kind
not the
of show.
consultant's job to tell us whether to do the addition or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, so they'll provide us with, you know, what they think the space can hold, what it needs, and we've given them a lot of information. I know you ladies have on what you think it needs. And then the actual decision, this committee could make a recommendation to the select board, but then we sort of kick it back to my board, to the select board.
And where is the funding coming from?
Well, that's would
That's
be
going to
the,
be another thing that's up.
right, that would be part of the select board's decision making, whether they decide to go forward or not, would be where does the funding come from?
And would you have that answer in 2 weeks?
Not in 2 weeks.
And that's really outside the scope of the consultant. The consultant
Yeah.
is just assessing
Yep.
what you can do and what it would cost.
Yep,
Right.
the consultant is telling us what you can, what the building, how, the condition of the building, what you can do, like Ari said, what it's gonna cost to do these other things, and then it goes from here to the select board to, make a decision.
So where's the money actually supposed to come from?
Well, it could come in a couple of ways. The town could have it, which we don't. It could go as a debt exclusion. We could go to town meeting and ask the folks to, ask out all the residents of Lakeville if they want to pay for additions to the senior center. So we could have a great night and they could say yes,
Or they could say
or
no.
they could say no. So, yep, yep.
I've spoken to, I was telling Devaney, I've spoken to several types of people. And you have the young 60s and you have the old olds. And the young people say they want to go to the Y for exercise because they don't want to be senior citizens. And then you have the old that don't feel that they're going to be doing much with their walkers and their canes. So you're kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
But when you said about town meeting, that's,
Yep. And at that point would be how either this committee or this committee in conjunction with the select board and, you know, passionate seniors who would like to see, they would have to get together and they would try to promote the debt exclusion. That's how that would work. I'm not quite sure, Ari, any other funding mechanisms that we
Well, there
would?
is some of the mitigation money from LeBaron,
Yep,
but that's a few $100,000.
Right.
yeah, that's not a whole
Not
lot
much.
of money.
You
Right.
could also go to the legislature and hope that they'll provide some
Yep.
funding, but, you know, again, that would be a piece of. So after that, you're really just talking about, you know, either free
Raising-
cash or debt
Yep,
exclusion.
the money through taxation, yep. Yep, and that's why the needs assessment is really important because, you know, if someone stands at the microphone and says something like, well, what are we not providing? And we don't have an answer, then they could say, well, then I don't see the need. So that's why it's really important, and Laurie's worked really hard with, you know, the consultants at trying to make sure they know what it is that we need.
And I'm learning as we go too, and I have some wonderful teachers here helping me. And it's, you know, it's not only need, but it's necessity. And so I'm working on it and I'm figuring things out, but I thank you all for your help with that.
Are you taking into consideration the proposal for the land that the old hospital is on?
For,
Additional housing?
Yeah.
So
That's all really new. I know some of it is, and this, we're getting outside the scope of this
Right.
meeting, but I just want to honor your question. You know, that has a big assisted living component, and a lot of times in assisted living, they provide a lot of services there for them, so we don't know the impact, but as soon as Rhino hasn't officially really given us anything, so there's not much for us to ask them yet or a forum to do so. But when they do, we will certainly ask those questions and, you know, find out how all the town may be impacted by what they're
it's
planning.
supposed to be a large what did they call it?
200 units, multifamily.
Multi,
Yeah.
and then 55 and above
So,
units
yeah.
as well.
We haven't had the opportunity yet to really speak with them, so we certainly, you know, will do that when
Because
when
it's
we-
certainly going to show or prove, if it goes through, a need for expansion here more than putting a warehouse there would have.
Right, but, you know, we can't really talk until we see what they're gonna present
Right.
us directly, so. So anyways, does anyone have any other questions from the consultant?
Well, I guess I got a couple, but I just want to touch a little bit upon what you just mentioned as far as looking for the future of Lakeville, and we've echoed the same thing Leah just said is, you know, what we're not doing for our seniors that we want to be doing and what's the cost associated with that. That's what the part of the feasibility study is we want to hear exactly what everybody wants, and then we do an analysis on it to see if it's feasible. Hence a feasibility study. With that comes projections on what we always hear, right? We have an aging population here in Lakeville, and the census reflects that. The demographics are changing. So, you know, to your point, if we do see an influx of age-restricted housing, you will see more of a need here. And, you know, as this progresses, that should probably be part of the data once we find more out about what's going on, so it's a great point. George alluded to, you know, closeout documents. This is gonna be finished up in a final report. I'm assuming it's gonna be presented to the select board, or to this board, again, in its completed phase. Along with that will be, you know, updates to narratives and some of the beginning stuff with you know, equipment. I think it would be very helpful to look at the smaller edition versus the larger edition and see what parts of the remodel $1.2 million or whatever it was is going to be mandated by code and what is not. So as we go through that line, the smaller edition wouldn't require fire protection upgrades. We talked a little bit about, you know, dry fitting the addition in the event that 10 years down the road we do another addition, it's easier just to plug into that. If we're gonna do the larger addition, this whole building needs to be sprinkled. And what that means is your ceilings are coming out, all pipes are getting put in, sprinkler heads. So you gotta be cognizant of that return on investment. So, you know, for an extra 600 square feet, now all of a sudden you might be another $250,000 in renovation work here. So is it worth it at that point? So we're gonna see this slide scale of return on investment, where if we do an addition of a certain size, we're increasing programming, it's increasing space, but then once we go over that, you'll see a diminished return on investment because you're spending more money for less square footage, right? You're gonna have more required improvements to this portion of the building, which we all can agree has been kept up very well and is a beautiful building. So I think that that's the analysis that we really want to focus in on the final report, so that we can narrow it down to say, okay, if we do 1,500 square feet, it's going to be $700 a square foot. If we do 2,000, it might creep up over 1,000 after you talk a square foot, after you include the improvements to this. The larger you go, the more parking you need, so we'll have to evaluate the parking spaces. The more of a chance the septic system is going to have to be expanded significantly. So, you know, those are a lot of the things that we need to flesh out during this next process, and hopefully that'll encourage further discussion on which way the town may or may not go. But we've emphasized this over and over again. In order to get before town meeting, we really want to know what we're not doing for our seniors, because we have a responsibility to provide services to the seniors that are afforded to them as residents of the town. So we need to know what's not being done, what we need to make sure that it's happening, and then the cost associated with that. And we're just going to be fiscally responsible and say, you know, these are our like-to-haves, these are our need-to-haves. And we'd all be able to go to town meeting and look everybody in the straight face, with a straight face, and say, look, we've got to figure out how to fund this at that point. We've got a little bit of work to do to get there, though.
Yep. So at this point, we're just making sure that the consultant is fulfilling all their obligations on the study. So this is like our last, you know, talk with them before they produce their final product to us, so that we have as much information as they can give us before we start talking about it as a town.
Have you talked to many of the senior citizens themselves?
Have I?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep, I talked to almost everyone that's in here about it, asking opinions, and they range. The opinions range on what they want. I'll say there's probably about 90% that say they want a larger addition, they want more programming. That's the consensus. I know exercise is really a key point. I've said that from the beginning with the exercise classes. What I'm trying to do right now, being a little proactive, I think I told some of you that were at class today, is I'm trying to, one particular class that everyone wants, what I'm trying to do to be proactive is I'm trying to fit it in on other days. So I have been able to fit an exercise class in that everyone likes, 2 more days during the month. So I'm trying to compensate a little bit and move things around and see what I can do on that end, just to get what folks are looking for. Right now, it's mostly exercise that they're requesting.
Well, two things, Lori. First of all, I want to compliment you on the senior center because I was in Middleborough today and it doesn't even come up to this place. I mean, the decorations is just so
Well, that's
dismal.
fun.
You know, I mean,
Decorating is fun.
you know, but the other
Thank
thing
you
is
very
the people
much.
on the outside that don't come here are homebodies. They don't want to move. So you've got the ones that are here that are for it, and you got the ones that are out there that are just contented to be home, and it doesn't even enter into their.
So the other consideration going forward as the town, as the select board, and everyone that we rely on to help us with decisions is also, you know, like George keeps telling us, this building is a great building. It's been very well maintained.
Yes,
We want to
yes.
be able to provide that for any new addition or, you know, renovations. So would that involve more custodial staff? Would that involve more help for
Absolutely,
Laurie?
yeah.
And these are all things that you can't pay for with like one-time funds. Those are things that you have to be able to put in the regular operating budget. So, you know, let's say town meeting says, hey, let's have at it and build the biggest addition we possibly can. Well, then we have to staff it.
Are you going to
So-
have a way of the older people getting to the town meeting?
Well, you know, that would all be part of, if the select board decides to bring it forward, that would be part of getting information out, you know. So
Because
we're just,
transportation's a problem.
and town meetings usually at night,
At night,
you know.
that's the toughest.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely.
But, you know, and those are all things that, you know, we'll work on when we're sort of putting a campaign together. But right now, the hardest part is just figuring out what we should, you know, what we should do. Knowing, you know, even right now, we had a meeting last week and the select board did with the finance committee and the town administrator and the town accountant. And it's gonna be a tough budget year next year. So, you know, we already know that, you know, we have some limitations, so you kind of have to figure out when is it a good time to ask folks for an extra $2 million, you know,
luck.
so, yeah. So anyway, so what we want to do tonight is just our last, you know, really conversation on the final report, and then the next meeting will be the actual final report, and that should tie up, you know, everything that we've asked them to do for us. So, any other last questions? Okay. All right, thank you very much. I'm sure, you know, if we need anything, if we get any questions between now and then, we can get them to you, but I think we've done quite a bit of study here, so. Okay, next thing on our agenda is to approve the minutes of October 18th, 2023. So I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of October 18th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? No? No corrections? No? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Okay, number 3, I think we already discussed next steps. And number 4 is schedule our next meeting. So 2 weeks puts us right smack dab around the holidays, so I say we go to January.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be ready with our report, but yeah, we can push it.
Yeah.
Stay away from that.
So, how about the second week of January, maybe?
10th?
The 10th, do we have anything going on?
Leah, I know when we did the fire station town hall feasibility study, the final presentation was before the select
Select
board as
board.
well, along with the feasibility group. So, I mean, does it make sense to have
To
a
do that.
presentation together with the select board?
Yeah, it probably does. I appreciate that. I forgot that totally. So, yeah, so I guess it's up to me then and Ari to sort of determine when the meeting date is, because we'll have to figure out what the select boards, their meetings are usually on Monday nights. So we will,
The normal schedule will be 8th and 22nd in January.
okay. So we will have to talk to Brian Day as our chair, so we'll have to speak to him and see what, he and Ari have on the agenda. So I guess I will get that, Ari and I will get that to everybody. All right, sound good?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for that reminder, Nate, I'm sorry. All right, so I believe that's it. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, LakeCAM.